Alright, so this last video is going to be over the Cold War and German reunification. Okay, so let's dive in. Let's see what we got. Alright, there's our standard. So, what is a Cold War? Well, the United States and the Soviet Union were the two most powerful countries in the world after World War II. Okay, we call those superpowers. Alright, not because that they're like Spider-Man or Batman or Superman, because they are the most powerful countries in the world. Therefore, we call them superpowers. Alright? Alright, so they're going to build up their nuclear weapons and military, but they never declare war on each other. During this time period, the two countries had a period of distrust and misunderstanding. This basically means they didn't trust each other, they didn't like each other, they wanted to outdo each other. Okay? They wanted to say, well, they're both superpowers, they're rivals, so who is the best? Okay, and they wanted to basically do this without ever actually fighting. Okay, all right. February 4th through the 11th, they met. The Allies met in Yalta. Okay, you got the U.S., France, and Soviet Union, and they're going to discuss the dividing of Germany. Okay, Germany is going to be divided into East and West Germany. They're going to talk about the formation of the United Nations, which is still around today. We call that the UN, which is headquarters is in New York City. German war reparations. Again, Germany still having to pay for stuff. And then who would control Poland? That was important as well. Okay, and if you don't know where Poland is, that's the country right next to Germany. All right. Friends no more. Okay, diplomatic relationships between the Soviet Union and the United States began to decline after World War II. We kind of just talked about that. Conflict brings change, and change brings conflict. Okay, the United States wanted to spread spread democracy, and the Soviet Union wanted to spread communism. Okay, so you got two very conflicting ideas on how governments should be ran. The United States said, "Hey, everybody should have rights and freedom and vote." And then the Soviet Union said, no way, we feel like communism is the best, and we want everybody to be communism in the world. Okay, basically, the color for communism is red, and they wanted to paint the world red. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means they wanted everybody to be communist. The United States, on the other hand, did not want that and wants to stop it. Okay, they want to contain communism. Alright, now, there's a video here. You can't click on it because you're watching the video now, but basically all it talks about is it's a man named Winston Churchill. He was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom during the early part of the Cold War, during World War II as well, and he's going to talk about how an iron curtain has fallen across Europe. Well, does that mean an actual iron curtain is now falling across Europe? No, it's a figure of speech. Okay? All right, there's no real iron curtain. What he's saying is that there are some democratic countries and there are some communist countries, and they don't get along, and they have very different ideas of how things should be done in government. All right, so let's talk about Germany being divided. After World War II, Germany is going to be divided to ensure that it would never again pose a military threat to Europe. Okay? People wanted to make sure, hey, Germany is not going to be a problem. So how'd they do it? They split them in half. Western Germany is controlled by the United States, United Kingdom, and France. Eastern Germany is going to be controlled by the Soviet Union. So what does that mean? You got one side that's democratic, one side that's communist. Okay, here's how it broke down. All right, here's your communist side with the Soviet Union. Here's your democratic side. Okay, all right, right there. Is it a perfect split? No, but that's how it looks. Okay, what is this right here? This is Berlin. Berlin was also split. Okay, we'll get to that in a little bit. Alright, there's another picture of West Germany and East Germany. Again, this side right here, East Germany is communist. West Germany is democratic. Here's your Iron Curtain. Okay, notice everything in red is communist. This is what the Soviet Union, all this, they owned all this land. Okay, all right. You know, we got Russia here. Okay, other countries right here. That's the Soviet Union. And then your blue countries are going to be your democratic countries. Okay, all right. All right, 1949, you have NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is created. You have 12 nations, including the United States, France, and the United Kingdom. Their main purpose in life is to stop communism. It says right here, they oppose the Soviet Union and communism. Now, on the other side of things, you have the Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact is the communist countries in Eastern Europe led by the Soviet Union. They didn't like democracy. So imagine this. You have, on this side, you have NATO and democracy. On this side, you have the Warsaw Pact and communism. Okay? Okay? They don't like each other. They're going against each other. Okay? All right. One big popular thing that went on during the Cold War was the space race. Okay? October 4th, 1957, it's kicked off with Russia launching Sputnik, which is the first orbiting satellite. The United States follows 3 years later with launching Ham the chimpanzee. Now, in the end, after going back and forth, we've talked about this before, we know that the actual first person to go up into space and orbit around the world is going to be from the Soviet Union. But the first person to get to the moon is American, and that is Neil Armstrong. All right, so in the 1960s, particularly 61, you got the construction of the Berlin Wall in Germany. Okay, this is going to put a border right down the middle of Berlin. Okay, we know Berlin is the most important city in Germany. Some of us actually went there in the VR room. Okay, well, it's going to be split right down the middle with the Berlin Wall. Okay, and people are not allowed to go back and forth. Understand that, guys. If you live on one side of the wall, you're not allowed to travel to the other side of the wall during this time. You have to stay on one side. You cannot go to the other. Okay, it is controlled by the Soviet Union. All right, there was a video. All right, let's talk about conflicts and communism. Okay, you're going to have some different conflicts that are going to happen during the Cold War. Got the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, all right. You know, these all played a major role in the Cold War. Okay, and you know, if you're wondering, well, why did we go to war while we were at war? Well, basically, guys, why we went to Korea and fought, why we went to Vietnam and fought, why we kind of had little battles with Cuba it all goes back to communism. The United States did not want Korea to be communist. They didn't want Vietnam to be communist. They didn't want Cuba to be communist. So what did they do? They went in those countries and tried to fix things. Okay? As we know, especially with Korea, they're split now. North Korea is communist, South Korea is democratic. Okay? All right? Cuba is still communist to this day. All right? The leader who was over Cuba at the time during the Cold War, all through the Cold War, Fidel Castro, his brother Raul Castro is now the leader of Cuba. Okay, so there's a lot of ties still today that goes along with the Cold War. All right, 1980s. This is going to be toward the end of the Cold War. You have Eastern European countries begin to abandon communism. They do not feel like it's working. They want to get away from it. In 1985, a guy named Mikhail Gorbachev is going to ascend to power in the Soviet Union. He's going to be the last leader, okay? All right, the Soviet Union. All right, now, communism is going to fail. And when that happens, the Berlin Wall is going to come down and Berlin is reunited. The Berlin Wall stood for nearly 3 decades, not only as a literal divide between West and East Berlin, but also a symbolic divide. Okay, it symbolized the divide between East and West Germany, as well as the divide between people who supported democracy and people who supported communism. Okay? With the fall of the Berlin Wall, democratic ideals spread into communist territories and weakened communist political control. Okay? So basically, when the wall fell, people felt as if democracy had won and communism had lost. Okay? There is a picture of the Berlin Wall coming down. You can see my man right here is pumped and excited. All right. German reunification leads to the fall of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union could no longer maintain a presence in Eastern Germany. They had to worry about their own selves in their own country. So they had to get out of Eastern Germany. When that happened, Germany is reunited and becomes a single country in 1990, okay, which is actually the year I was born. 91, the Soviet Union is dissolved and the Cold War ends. Okay, why did the Cold War end? Because the Soviet Union collapses and is no more. They become Russia again. All right, okay, all right. So you know you're going to have to answer some questions on the Nearpod. So let's go over those real quick. What do you remember about the Cold War? Okay, you have to answer that. What are some similarities between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War? Okay, type a couple of those out. What do you think the Allies' decision to divide Germany and Berlin during the Cold War? What do you think of that? All right, do you think that was the right thing to do? And then lastly, what do you think might have happened if the United States and Soviet Union actually attacked one another and the Cold War turned into a true war? How do you think that would have gone? Okay. All right. So you're going to, when the video ends, click next and on the Nearpod answer those questions. Okay.